last 2-3 years been doing this work that I'm calling Beyond Food. And the idea is to show that the problems and the situation of street vendors, specifically of street food vendors, goes beyond just being a place to get cheap food, but it's connected to a lot of dimensions of the city. Like Leah said, this is the third one that we have organized. We did one where we discuss from the perspective of the consumers and the vendors, and then we did another one where we discuss the how different groups of street vendors deal with the government officials. And then the one today would be around the notion of street foods and the right to the city. I'm not going to go into much detail of the notion of the right to the city because one of the speakers would cover most of the core of what this concept is. We have two speakers today. We have first Unpunsa, who is the director of HomeNet. HomeNet is an organization that has been working for a very long time in support of informal workers, and they have done absolutely extraordinary work with domestic workers and also in support of the network of street vendors of Bangkok. So we have Unpunsa, and then we have Ajahn Isnapol. He's a lecturer at the Faculty of Architecture of KEM UTD, and he's done work on mobile street vendors in Bangkok. That's the subject of his PhD. So I would like you to please come, both of you, and then we'll proceed with the presentation.
Foundation for Labor and Employment Promotion or Government Thailand. We work with the informal workers in Thailand. And recently, about 2 years back, we tried to organize the street vendors. And right now we have a network. We call the Network of Thai Street Vendors for Sustainable Development. And today, Kohe asked me to talk about the issue that about the right to the city. I will try my best. That is not easy to. It's easy and simple at the same time. If we try to open our mind, so it's easy and simple at the same time from my perspective. So I will talk about living in the city and earning on the street. So everyone knows that city is a center for everything. Education, health, job, transportation, and market. And we know that the government spends lots of national resources to develop a city, so everyone has the right to enjoy living in a city. Not only the rich or poor, everyone can. And especially in Bangkok, people migrate from rural area to enjoy living in Bangkok. And Bangkok, we know that Bangkok population is about 5.6 million. But it's estimated that there are another more than 10 million, so it means that there are another 5 million that latent population. I will give you some sample of one street vendor. Talk about Nok. Nok is a female street vendor on Lad Pao Road. She came from a poor family, farming family in the northeastern part, Thailand. With her ambitious to study, she moved to live with her relative in Bangkok at the age of 13, trying to work as a babysitter, domestic worker, and an employee for a street vendors. Then she realized that working as a street vendor does not require high investment, but offers sufficient return for living in a city such as Bangkok. So at age 17, she began to sell flowers and seasonal fruits from a footpath. Right now, she is currently 40 years old and has finished secondary school, has a family with 2 children, and she's still a street vendor, and she wants to save all her money that she can earn to send her children to go to school. So Nok life is a familiar story of migration and a search for an improved livelihood in a large city. The street vending is a secure way of life that enables people to feed themselves and their families and to support their children in further education. It's estimated that Bangkok has about 300,000 street vendors. And we know that in 2014, the BMA, the Bangkok Metropolitan Administration, they try to regulate the street vendor in Bangkok, and its effect about more than normally in Bangkok they have a resident area about 700 area that allow street vendor to went in that area. It's more than 400 was banned by the government, the BMA. So as a city grows and develops, the number of street vendors increase. So city administrators have various views on regulating street vending. Some recognize that the important role played by vendors in local economic development, while others argue that street vending is illegal because goods are sold in public spaces. Also that the vendor hinder pedestrian mobility, create dust and traffic jam, old-fashioned and obscure the beautiful landscape of the city. There are also allegations that some stores sell pirated goods or unhygienic food. Most street vendors are not registered in the city, are not part of the city population, and have no voting right. They migrate only to take advantage of a city prosperity. So there are 2 ways of thinking. One way that street vendor is local economic development, help local economic development. They sell cheap goods, and it's convenient to buy food and goods from street vendor because you know that the traffic jam in Bangkok is very bad. So for women like us, it's easy. It reduces our burden. It reduces the time. And at the same time, in terms of safety, it found out that there are some research from UDDC said that street vendor is play and eyes and ear on the street. So people feel safe to walk on the street that they are street vendor. And at the same time, it's Thai culture, it's a charming of Bangkok. That the tourist is a magnet for tourists But on the other side, they argue that it's illegal. And the similar sale on because the similar sale on public space, so it's illegal. And in terms of mobility and in terms of traffic jam and old-fashioned, dirty, comparing with this shopping mall, big mall. So it's very old-fashioned, and at the same time, they have no voting rights. This is maybe the most important for the politicians in Bangkok, but I'm not sure because from our study that street vendor is more than one generation. Many of them work for 1 or 2 generations or 3 generations. So I'm not sure whether they have no voting right or not. And in terms of public space, if we come back to public space is a public goods for all city residents to access and enjoy, whatever it is for leisure, transportation, or earning a livelihood. So public space is a scarce resource everywhere, but public space can be for you, for me, and for everyone. So street vendors use public space as a resource to help earning their living in the city. They move to live in the city, but employment is very important. So they have to earn their living. And public space, a roadside, can help them to survive in a big city. Because if we talk about equalities between the rich and the poor, the roadside or the selling on the street can help them to one step to survive and to reach in Bangkok. What should mean by regulation? As roadside is public space, it needs to regulate by using inclusive practices to ensure that everyone, including street vendors, have right to access and enjoy. Regulation doesn't mean eviction of street vendors, but managing to offer possibility for diverse youth to coexist, ultimately making cities more vibrant and inclusive. We talk about leave no one behind, we talk about inclusive city, we talk a lot, but what's the practice? We can see that in terms of street vendor in Bangkok, Thai government also signed on the SDG with other countries. This is talking about urban settlement, talking about rights to city. But what they are thinking and what they are doing, I can say that for all of us, especially for all of you who are foreigners, I think that you won't enjoy that Bangkok is only building and building. No people, no seafood. I think so many of you may go back to your country because it's not interesting anymore to see only the big building. But Thai government, their development aim is go in that direction. This is what we try to keep saying. That, as I told you, that it's simple, but it hard in terms of right to the city. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I suggest that we go straight to Istanbul and then we take the round of questions and comments after that. Okay? Thank you. This is the does that work? You have to get out of that. Okay. There it is. media disappearance.
My
Okay. Thank you, George and Leah, and good evening, everyone here. Sorry for my lateness, waiting. Traffic jam. I came from Bangkok and Thailand. And my background is in architecture, and I'm doing my PhD in urban planning, urbanism. So I will just take on this. Okay. So this is more like maybe theoretical thing that I would throw to you, but maybe some of you would, if you're in our discipline like architecture, urban planning, you may share some of that as well. This idea has been 50 years ago already proposed by Henri Lefebvre, the French sociologist or the thinker, philosopher of the city. That is his book. So basically, it's what is the right to the city? It's like more like a cry or a demand, right? It's not really like a legal right. It's kind of a conceptual right here that we are raising or trying to assert for. And then, it is really very central to the urban life that we just saw the earlier presentation, and it can be manifested in many other forms, right? But it's the kind of highest or superior form of that, not just to the habitat, like the physical space, but as well as to the to inhabit, right, or to live in a city. And maybe a few slides of these theoretical things. I just go through, just give me like 10 minutes. It is more like, let's say like if we are in the urban, any city in the world, if we work there, if we spend our life there, do we consider to be that citizen of that place, right? Like, can you vote in Bangkok if you're from Ubon, Udon, or Surat? Can you vote? Or Bangkok governor? I don't know when is it. It's going to happen soon, right? Because we have the general election already. But sorry. Yeah. So the other thing is like you can also appreciate or partake or participate in any urban activities in life, just as a slide. Not just like the marginal one, but it is also for the privileged people also. So this is kind of very broad concept of idea. And it is also accompanied by other things like right to the centrality, okay, or the right to the French ouvert, how do you pronounce it? But it's like a work of art. I mean, we are all collaborating in a way, or in our own part, in making or kind of playing this kind of city or urban life. It's like an orchestra. We have our own part in contributing in playing, making as a musical tone in a way. So Bangkok might have its her own kind of tune or rhythm, right? Whereas other cities like KL, Singapore, Hanoi, Rome, London, Paris, whatever. So that's kind of very brief idea of Henri Lefebvre, right to the city. Okay, we can go in details later on. But this is another urban scholar, Mark Purcell. He kind of briefly summarized like what we have is on it's your right, it's your left here, like national on our identity, our national are more like hegemonic, right? It's like rather like what we propose is, or what the Lefebvre or Purcell proposes, we should take urban as a more as a new way of providing this kind of urban citizenship or the political community that we can partake in our life. So this is kind of very different. Like what I said earlier, like if you're in Chiang Mai, can Bangkok people vote on PM 2.5 or really participate in that kind of environmental issue, whatever? Or we have like Makassar, what we call the railway
park complex from the, can other people in Thailand raise their idea and partake or have a say in that area? That's kind of more very radical in a way, progressive, very difficult to deal with. Even today, voting system, democratic system is quite difficult already in its own term. So that's the thing. Right. So now I'm more taking myself or taking the idea of the right to the city down to the street level or to what we have now, like these street food practices. Like, as you can see here, like there are many contrasting views, right, of the city of Bangkok, like you all witnessed already. Like the poor here, both the informal, like I would say, or the urban informality, the formal, and these are like the capitalist city, right? The more like world, global city that we are aspiring to be, right? You can see all that. But they are coexist, right? They sit alongside together and play each part, even though sometimes it's more contesting, right? There's a tension between the two. But that's a city life, that's an urban life. And not just in Bangkok, but I think in many other cities, even in the more advanced economy, you can find that as well. And as mentioned earlier, we have this kind of banning of street food, this campaign of reclaiming the street, the sidewalk and all that. And which is like, many of the street vending activities are being replaced or removed or even evicted elsewhere. And it's been in the media or in the news coverage, like, it's kind of a crazy thing, like, to do, like, you are in a way killing off, or it's the spirit of the city, right? This is your own selling for your own charming in a way, but now you're killing your own spirit. So, and you go to see Khao San Road already now, it's gone, right? And many areas, I think in so many areas of Covid Road over here, used to be a lot of street vendors, Bangkok and all that. So, Dora, it's all gone. Only very few places left. And I will just take you to a quick case of mine in Big Brow area. It's a small sidewalk garden, okay? It's not even on the sidewalk itself. What I'm trying to say here is like this idea of cleaning, making order or taking, reclaiming the footpath or the sidewalk, is go beyond what we call public space or public sidewalk or the footpath already. And it is being into the urban elite or into those people who say, this is not the good side of the urban landscape. What's the word? I lost it. It's the disorder, chaotic elements of urban landscape we should remove it. In a way, it's kind of symbolizing the backwardness, right? Poverty and all that. But it's very active in that small plot of land, small area, right? Where people, the street vendor, they push their cart there and they sell, and people, before they head home, right, 5, 6 p.m. in the evening, they buy something here, then they go into the soil in the community, and that's it. Because they are so tired from working already, or even traveling 1 hour, 2 hours, that's normal in Bangkok. So why bother cooking? So we can cook at home already. I mean, we can buy anything at home or just reheat it, anything like that. So this is like kind of very, I mean, for me, I don't want to romanticize it. It's like variety, diversity, cheap, nice and clean. I mean, very few times they have that diarrhea or somebody else, but most of it, it's fine. And then they what they say here is that they want the small plot of land here in front of the there are other kind of rental or commercial shop beside, so but they want to take it back and make it into a small plot. But this is the sidewalk there. And what they do is they just remove all those street vendors and put it like very dry sand and nothing's happening. So this is back then, before, kind of very active, small, very vibrant, right? And street vendors themselves, they make a good living. People around the area could rely on that. But now it's like, okay, you can walk, and then you have this, and then you have this, green, but no people, no life, lifeless. So how could we, in a way, it's kind of, we go along, we go fine with these rules and regulation, but another side is lifeless. It's not the city we want, okay? But not too chaotic. Okay, I know that. I want to walk smoothly. You can make our time. What's the balance? What's the point there? How can we make that? And other busy district is in the Pranok, Kosaton. Again, it's got, I think, 4 or 5 meter wide of the sidewalk. But still, because this is the law, we want to reclaim back our walkway. We should follow the rule regulation. So this is the Tesaki, right? What do you call Tesaki? Staff to reclaim it back, and people were fighting. I'm not sure whether still today they were fighting or they were gone to recheck. And again, before the election, just 2 weeks before the election, some of the political party, they kind of on another, like I think July, they host this kind of event and say, what if we take back or we call back the street vendors? And they were proposing kind of other possibility or policy to somehow in a way bringing them back. So, but then in this news, like Miss Sirani, she kind of stated here, like if the street vendor were to make a comeback, they need to better manage and regulate it better than this, right? And the vendor should be also equipped with business training and knowledge of the sanitary practices. Needless to say, decision maker must not only listen to the vendor's opinion, but also input from local community that will also affect the vendors in return. And people like us as well. So it's like, this is a very collective way of managing, right? And working together, not just one way of working, like pro-local authority or pro-policy, but we should also take into account of our everyday life of our people and middle class like us, or even the rich. They could park their Porsche to the sidewalk and have the noodles, or have the thing and then I mean, and this morning, Singapore, they've been posting their street hawker culture last year, I think, and then it's kind of sad in a way, like Singapore, very managed, very modernized, but we might even say it's kind of staged or not that authentic. We can discuss or debate about that, but still, in a way, they try to preserve or, improve and push it to the very end, like UNESCO thing, and make it like a culture to in a way everyone can share it and be happy to live in it, right? Anyway, and people like younger generation could even be like barista, having this kind of food culture, startup, take that as a pride and make more, even not just like everyday basic daily life as a living, but even push it further as a kind of food chain and all that kind of thing. Singapore, but whereas Bangkok, no, go up, get out. We don't like you. You are what we want. Here, so coming to the conclusion now, or maybe this discussion before we conclude is like, who really owns the city, right? Or who really own these urban spaces, the sidewalk, the footpath, and who can manage them, right? And what benefit or who will benefit from it if you regulate it in such a way, And my proposal is like, we could, relating back to the city, right to the city is like, what we see, even though it's kind of failing, and the street vendor, they might fail to go off or even to protest against with the government or local authority. But that is actually, they are in a way asserting or make a kind of the right to the city already, but it's outside the rule or regulation. It's not even fit in. I mean, they were more progressive. I'm not saying that we should make even more complexifying, make the society even more complicated in a way. But in a way, they were already doing the right to the city in their own way. That's my kind of claim, I would say. But then what could we, as a profession or academy, we should not just rethink or redesign, but should we act in accordingly to what we have already. I mean, there are a lot of like knowledge or any kind of experience we could learn from. Like, generation is passed through. Where to pick a spot to sell your stuff, that needs a lot of knowledge, right? You cannot just say, okay, tomorrow I'm going to be a street vendor. I push my cart there and I park there. There are lots of ways to work around, way of going around, operating. That might need to, it might inherit in a way, or it might be, you might move in a certain way to get experience and knowledge and to make a living out of that stuff. And which might be, my love is trilectic or triad, and he many times claimed like urban planning or urban life is about confronting, contesting one another, and then it resolves until it's getting better towards the future. And what I would conclude here is like, how do we, again, back to the right to the city, or how could we make this more like active urban citizenship, or to reclaim our urban life, or very radical urban democracy, we would say, aiming to have this kind of urban justice. I mean, this might sound very utopian or very floating in the air, but actually the people they're trying to do it. But I mean, as a government or local authority, or we, how do we really support that or encourage it in a more meaningful way and benefit all, which is very difficult, not an easy one. And yeah, we could all participate and appropriate in a way, right? And I would end here like the right to autogestion, in French again, is like, translate is like to be self-managed, to have their own self-management and their own collective social forces, right? The people themselves, the city dweller, the inhabitant, right? To take control of our life, of our society. That's the thing. Okay. Thank you. I will end it here.
Thank you very much. I'll take a little bit of advantage that I have the microphone. This is both sides of the same story. I mean, we're talking about basically the city is dynamic, and we make the city from the street vendor to the academic to the government officials. And although they're coming from two different angles, they really complement what Unsab said and what Kisnapol said. And I think it's the way to sustain, like Kisnapol said, the idea of a fair urban citizenship. Anyway, the floor is open. Questions, comments? Anybody? Yes. I don't think it gets there. Because one of them failed, so
maybe you want to just talk loud.
Can you speak loud?
Yeah, okay. I want to address the gentleman.
I think
He doesn't reach.
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. I'd like to address you professionally. I think that cities need to be looked at re-governance. Okay? Because we've lost our governance initially, the city. What has happened is that capitalism have taken over where a part of the society has been left behind. The part of the society that's been left behind are the street vendor level. You understand what I'm saying? That's the working class people. That is the marketplace of the street vendor. Now, that level of society should be a interfabric of the city, and it's not through capitalism. Now, what needs to happen, instead of us attacking street vendors, we need to go in and convince the government that they need to provide certain areas or certain pathways for this level of people, including residents. I mean, you know, this is amazing. You know, you have the result of street vendors. You have people that are maids in people's houses. They travel 2.5 hours on the bus and 2.5 hours back. That lady should be living in the city. The government should have, there are a lot of land, a lot of vacant places, a lot of things that the government can come in and bring those people back in the city. And that will also, let me give you an example. Like they would have a building that's vacant and they could put 5 or 6 families, and then the street vendor could be under the, you know, you have what they call shop housing. And they can live in the shop and that will satisfy part of it. What I'm just saying is that the government has to be relooked at.
Thank you very much. Wait. 1, 2, 3. Okay. And then we take the answers and then we do another round.
I want to thank both speakers for their very interesting observations on the phenomenon of street vendors in Bangkok. My observation as a resident, I've been here 5 years. I'm a regular user of things or vendors on the street. I buy food there every day, basically. I live in a neighborhood where the street vendors are very well established. There's actually, I would say, a monopoly among the street vendors for the spaces that I actually shop in. There's no opportunity for someone to bring a new, as you said, a cart or anything, because it's all taken up. And I don't know what the arrangement is, but there's certainly no room for new vendors in the spaces that I shop in. I also would observe that they know what they're doing from a business standpoint. There's a lady who sells mango and sticky rice on the corner of Ceylon Road and Soy Salad Bank. When she gives me change, she takes out a wad of bills, 1,000 baht notes that is about this thick. I mean, she's got more money than I do. And I think some of the other vendors, they've worked really hard. They have very high volume turnover in their businesses. They know what they're doing. Now, my question is, who are they paying to occupy that space? What concerns me, because it seems to be pervasive throughout Thailand, from my observation, is the amount of corruption that might be involved. You know, are the police taking handouts to not harass them on a daily basis? That's my question.
I have a similar question on that same subject. I drive down Wireless Road every morning about between 5:30 a.m. and 6 a.m. and I see the vendors setting up their stalls for the day's work. And at every vendor, there is a very nice pickup truck or car offloading the goods to set up the shop. So my question is, are these vendors working for somebody else and they're providing the delivery service of what they need? Or are these independent vendors and they own their own car and truck because it's a dual income family? The husband's working and the wife is working and they can afford a pickup truck. Thank you.
Just this last one on this round, and then we go another round.
Okay. First, I feel very thankful for your knowledgeable presentation, and I would like to add one point to this gentleman. As I have like the background on urban planning, I was a urban planner. One thing I could summarize is that Bangkok is lack of public space in itself. Because I've been doing the research about Bangkok and political public space. So if you might have known that in the past, when there was political demonstration, right, they kind of gather around like on the road because there's no place that they can go. There's really no somewhere else. So this problem also happened to street vendors. And actually, I would like to add that the first urban plan of Bangkok came up in 1992. So it is quite too late for Bangkok to really organize or even reorganize things in itself.
Next. Okay. Who's that?
Okay, the first question is it? I feel it's like more like suggestions. Is it? I mean, we can propose or we can work with the government, right, and especially with the middle class, to somehow work as a network, a net or platform in a way, like to not only like support the vendor, but it's also supporting themselves because the middle class people, they also rely on these food or services. But again, the question if we go to the government or how these policy might be, what's the word, reacted or applied, implemented, they might go through series of processes, and in a way it might get lost in certain direction or if there are other related questions that I might even touch on is like it might even have these kind of mafia or conflict of interest, people claiming this is my territory, this is my place. Even the street vendor themselves, they even might have certain reclaiming among themselves, this is my place, I came here first, you go there. I mean, there's this kind of microphysics of power, right? You find another one and all that already. And if touching on that a bit, it's like your question is, who are they, or which one is it, paying or work? I would maybe, people to add on, like, I would say it's like they might co-opt this. We might have like a myth, like a misperception of street vendor. They are not like the poor people. I mean, urban informality or informality could exist in many levels of our society. Politicians do this kind of informal lobbying. Right? It's not, the deal is still under the table, right? But then when they announce it, that's formalized. But through their process, it's kind of informal in a way. I mean, that's the thing. It's happening everywhere, right? But again, when we track down to these, the police or the people who are working with, they even might be even richer, right? And people from our neighboring countries, right? They might work as a pay by day, right? And they work for this kind of owner, which he might have like 10 cars, and they just put it like more like a semi-factory, small factory. You just go there and chop the fruits, and then you go and disperse around. I mean, there are many ways of, as a disguise, you know, to be really poor, or to act like you're poor, but you can get certain way around to earn more income, something like that. I think I will cover that.
Thank you. It's very interesting question, and I they use this opportunity to clarify because we work with the street vendor and there are more than 7,000 street vendors in the network, and they are affected by this policy. Firstly, it doesn't mean that in terms of informal worker, it doesn't mean that to work as an informal worker or street vendor is our choice. We have no choice. If we can choice, we want to be a teacher, want to work in this shopping mall, want to be a businessman or that, but there's no choice, there's no choice. So there's no formal job, so they have to decide to work as the informal workers. This funding. The second thing, they work very hard, as we said. They work very hard from our member, as I understand, the person, the street vendor who sell their product, their food or goods in Silom area or Sukhumvit area, they have to start working at 6 o'clock in the evening, and some of them finish at 4 o'clock in the morning. Because sometimes we say that probably as we are working with them, we have to change our time of working. We have to talk with them through Line or Facebook after midnight. So it's not that they work very hard. So in terms of they work hard, so they get good pay, and it's their choice. Why they have good for them? Why they can survive in a big city? And who are they paying? I think everyone knows. But who are they paying? Huh? you know.
Yeah.
So I need not to answer this question. You know that is in some cases it's funny, like because the BNA they will give you permission to sell in this area, and at the same time, in some case they give permission to you, and then they give permission to me, and they get to pay, double pay. And so we fight with each other to sell in this area. This is what we found from our study. And in terms of the pickup car, I can say that this is a big debate, big argument between the street vendor and the government official. That you are not poor, you are rich when you have a car. But you know, Bangkok is have a very bad system in terms of the public transportation. And if you want to sell your product, you need to load it. You need to carry that. And car is not, they cannot afford to stay in Silom, in Sukhumvit. It's impossible. So they stay far from the downtown. So that's why car is very important for them. And they have to buy car. And you know that in Thailand, it's different in Bangkok, especially in Bangkok. Car became basic need for Thai people. This is why they have a big car.
It's not a supplier. Could the car be a supplier? Not their car, it's a supplier.
I think there are some. Yeah.
It may be venerable.
Yeah, not always. But maybe they own the car, but they pay installment for that car. And maybe some, but I didn't, if the street vendor are migrants, if they are Vietnamese, if they are Burmese, it can be that there is one mafia will work on this. But why migrant worker can do that business, can work as a street vendor? It cannot it's prohibited. It's prohibited. But why they can? Who should be that mafia? And if the migrant can sell in that area, normally the policemen have to arrest, but not arrest them. What happened? You can see this logic. maybe that mafia is have a uniform. Huh? And in terms of the vision of the public space, I totally agree with you. If the Bangkok, if the BMA have vision, have a long vision, not only the case of street vendor, but in terms of the park and everything. But they do nothing. Very easy is banning. Very easy is the other is make a mistake. They will say like that. They don't look back to themselves, that they can make the pavement bigger, something like this. They can do that. But the very easy thing is eviction.
Can I just mention two more things? One of them is that I think that's what they are trying to emphasize is that people tend to have an idea that all street vendors are the same, and they're not. And a street vendor, from my experience, a street vendor that works in Silo or in Satchel, or a street vendor that works in Minbury are miles apart. The way that they are organized, the way that they do things is totally different. Bangkok is so large that you would find the whole range from people that have a lot of money to people that take home at the end of the day 200 baht. Okay? In terms of the informality, which you also was mentioning, I just wanted to point out that Southeast Asia is a rather unusual area. Most of the cities in Southeast Asia, in contrast to the rest of the world, when the economy, the formal economy grows, the informal sector grows too, which in most of the world is the other way around. And what now is when people are starting to realize that part of the problem is that the type of growth that China is having is not generating jobs. Simple as that. And the service sector doesn't have enough capacity to absorb the people. So where do they go? To the informal sector. They don't have much of a choice. Okay, last round. 1 here, 2, 3, 4. That's it.
Thank you. I am doing some research on behalf of the Thailand Development Research Institute. We are looking at the impact of e-commerce on the formalization of businesses. And I wondered if you could talk a bit about to what extent street vendors have formalized businesses or not, and to what extent they sell via e-commerce, so social media, whether they sell, for instance, on Facebook line, Food Panda, Grab, that kind of thing. And is there any difference in terms of the formalization of businesses? So the businesses which do sell online, do they formalize their businesses also, or is there no difference between that and the ones who just sell offline? Thank you.
Was it Rich?
I can scream.
Speak loud.
Yeah, speak loud, don't scream.
In the first presentation, you talked about the street vending as being very safe and secure, and that's really nice to hear. But I was wondering, and maybe tying into your point that street vendors can be very different, what are some of the dangers or main challenges that a street vendor would face, and maybe if that varies according to migration status or region, or like where you're selling? But what would be the dangers? And also a bit on migration. Are most street vendors, if there are most of them are migrants, are they permanently settled in Bangkok, or do they have still are they like circular migrants, or they still have this maybe back and forth to their
Yeah, sure.
So I'm concerned with the political solution that might come up. I believe this problem will definitely be dealt with because there is political will within Bangkok, and well, let's just say within Bangkok, to deal with this problem. Either it be dealt with democratically or undemocratically. It's already been dealt with undemocratically quite a bit in the last few years. So thinking from the side of dealing with it democratically, I would like to hear more of a solution. And I do think that politically, the democratic solutions will be pushed forward as more democratic forces come in Thai society. Like being part of the Future Forward Party and the canvassing campaign, the electioneering campaign, I definitely know that the candidates hear a lot about street vending issues, even though it's not really a National Assembly issue, but they do hear a lot, and the party itself is very concerned, right? And the party itself is trying to come up with solutions. And if people are following formal politics, they will know that Chachat from Pheu Thai is the leading candidate for the next mayor of the Bangkok metropolitan, and he'll definitely want to find a democratic solution. Now, so going into the details of democratic solution, you said 300,000 street vendors. I'm thinking in the core city center, at least half of that, maybe 200,000. Now, I live around Ari, so there's a good solution in Ari where they draw a line and they separate the streetways into half and half. If you have that solution, adding in some hawker centers, but that will be very limited because public space is very limited in the center of the city. It will not accommodate 200,000 vendors, okay? So how are we going to ration those spaces? And how are we going to give priority? Who will get priority? Who will get to choose the space, and what system should we have? How do we move from the unregulated system to a regulated system? You can give examples from Singapore or any other countries.
Last one.
All right, so I would like to make a question to Kun Sa, right? Is there any campaign to encourage the street vendors to register as residents in Bangkok so they have political rights? Then the second question would be, for all of you, could you give me, I don't know, an example of any metropolis in a developing country that has managed to address this problem, the problem of running for money successfully? And a third question, is there, sorry, that's a very third question.
It was one question.
Sorry, it's just talking about the right to the city, right? The Southeast Asia is a very specific place, different to Latin America, different to Africa, right? Different to Europe, right? So what would be the cultural, what's the difference? What makes Bangkok specific regarding to the right to the city compared with other countries?
Sorry, what makes Bangkok what?
Specific or special?
Okay, definitely last one.
I have read in some of the books that I have read, for example, in New York City, already the big businesses are losing because they cannot find people for employment. The people for employment comes from very small places. These people take apartments together with street vendors and other small SME sectors. So when you remove the SME, the micro SME sector from the city, the big business lose, because they don't get employed. So do we have any data confirming that? Because if you have, then it will be easy to convince the government that if you remove the micro people, then the big business lose because they don't get employment. Because it is these small people who give all the services in all these big buildings. Now, if the street vendors and if these people go, then they don't have people for employment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So, okay.
How can I pass this examination?
We all have like time. It's like, sorry. Okay, we will try to go through it. Formalize. Formalizing, okay. Formalizing the informal. That's very, I think, very difficult one. But for me, if we want to formalize anything, I think we should understand their nature, their feature, their way of working first. At the moment, what the government or the local authority trying to do is they don't really understand or even acknowledge. So in a way, you can make various kind of research or piling up this kind of information, and then you analyze them properly or understand them properly, you can work with them. And it's not just about we telling the vendors to do that. It's also taking them into account that what if you were supposed to move there, what are many other solutions? But again, it's not that simple, right? And when formalizing these, the benefit should also fall to the middle class, the big company, the city as a whole. And if you formalize these, in a way you might get the tax. Formalizing these, it's informal, they don't pay the kind of income tax, even though they don't reach the bar. But as our gentleman there, they have this big 1,000 baht note. So when they have to pay their taxes, what do they get? What kind of benefit they get? It's not just like you're good people, you should pay the tax. No, but when they are not well, they go to the clinic, hospital. Do they get treated free for their health or medicine? I mean, these kind of issues should be set up and bring it to the fore as well. And the online, they are, yes, now they are very onto this kind of online application, the line thing, they connect with each other as a network, as a group, and then even have this kind of online delivery, right? You said, okay, today I want to, suppose my research, I want to have like a salmon. Could you bring it from the market, and then I can pay you later on? It's like out of the normal service that they provide, but it's like additional extra kind of thing, which I would not say the formal doesn't have, but it's kind of this kind of nature or specific way of making this businesses. But what we call it the gig economy, right here, this kind of gig economy thing, that could be also fall into that sector as well. That would be, I think, mine. But if you, the more formalizing it, I think we tend to see more kind of formalizing these businesses in a way, right? The online, especially the online business. In a way, it's like not a threat, but saying if you don't come to us now, like the tax, tax revenue, if you don't come to us now, we will even charge you more. It's kind of, but what if we go to you? What do we really get? You help our business, or what else? This kind of thing. That's why should I give my money to you when I don't get even anything? I mean, this kind of thing should be discussed. Danger and migrant should be, or you to add anything?
I think it's some of the technologies. I think normally the upper class will access more than the working class. And I told you that they start working since 6 o'clock in the evening and finish in the morning. So how can they adapt themselves? But I can say that this is the way of the world. It will change some way, but maybe take more time on this because the society is changing. But maybe take some time. But in terms of the what should be dangerous, I think I can say that for the street vendor, it's not 100% that they are clean and clear. So maybe I'm not sure, no? But it's very rare to see in terms of cheating or very rare. I didn't see much on this. But
I mean,
maybe
the
unhygienic.
The experience of the street vendors, not the customer.
Ah, the street vendor themselves. You can add.
Actually, I can answer that. There are several studies that have shown that obviously street vendors are exposed to health hazards that other people are not exposed to that. And when they introduced the universal healthcare system here, one of the studies was to make sure that street vendors or other people that work on the streets, that includes also traffic policemen, etc., that the health coverage would extend to the kind of hazards that they had, which the rest of the population is never exposed to, because they work with gas, they are in the street all the time, they tend to have, for example, burns and things with the skin, so it is hazardous in terms of health.
And indicate. And in terms of the migrants, and in terms of the small business and big business, we did a study on this. You know that the network did a lot of work, within the past 2 years. You know, that we demonstrate, we try to did the allies with the academics and try to do the survey, did the survey, and the result is what as you said, that when there are no street vendor, especially in Sukhumvit, there are no street vendor, the big business, even the big hotel have bad business. And we share this, all the information, all the figure with the government. We went to the Prime Minister office. We talked to BMA. I went to there. We do the disobedience in Koh Samton. You know that a lot that we work on this, and it came out that it's not a legal issue. It's a political issue. I also hope that we work with, we try to reach out to, we try to talk with the political party,เพื่อไทย future forward, many parties, and if you go back, you will see that there are many several political parties talk about similar issues, and I hope if not a military government again, something will change. And state vendor themselves, they can understand that the state, I'm there to talk. The political, so I forgot. Yeah. The Bangkok cannot accommodate all the state vendor. It's impossible. But they themselves, they understand this. And they are prepared for regulate sales managing themselves. But we need to talk together. We need to sit on the table in a modernized way. We need to talk on the table and as a social dialogue. Not say that you should go out. It's not the way.
Okay, thank you very much to two speakers and for you to come to this event. Like Leah said, we are hoping to organize another one in maybe May. There is a page on Beyond Food. It's beyondfood.bkk. It's a Facebook page where we put these events, articles, etc. So thank you very much for coming. There is some refreshments over there, but before the refreshments, there is a nice little box by the door where we'd really appreciate if you could drop some